We begin the Gemara today on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph, the beginning of the line, about 15 lines from the top of Daf Gimel, Ve'emer Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara here is discussing the first halacha of the Mishnah that said that Rosh Hashanah l'Melachim is on a Chodesh Nisan. And the Gemara brought a source for this from what it says in the Pasuk you see by Shlomo HaMelech, that when it speaks about the year of his kingdom, it said in the Pasuk that it was the 4th year of his kingdom, and it puts that together with it also being the 480th year from Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we compare the two. So therefore we know that it comes from the Chodesh Nisan. That's a pasuk the Gemara brought in the beginning of Daf Beis Amud, in the middle of Daf Beis Amud Beis. But then the main discussion of the Gemara now is, how do you know when you count the years from Yetzias Mitzrayim, you actually count from Nisan? Maybe it happened Nisan, but when we count the years of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we count from another date in the year. Maybe we count from Tishrei or something else. So the Gemara brought a raya to that. The Gemara said that you see that when Aaron HaKohen passes away, the pasuk refers to it as the 40th year of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And then in the beginning of Chumash Dvarim, when it speaks about Vahi bar Baim Shana B'Ashti Yasa Chodesh, you mind closing the door there? B'Ashti Yasa Chodesh. So over there it also refers to it as the 40th year. Aaron HaKohen passed away when Rosh Chodesh Av. When was Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to the Yidden in Rosh Chodesh Shvat? And it's still the 40th year, even though Tishrei passed in between. If you're going to tell me that Tishrei makes it another year, because it's the beginning of the year, so then it should have been the 41st year. So that's a raya that it's all still the 40th year, because Nisan is when it changes, that it's the next year, and there was no Nisan in between. So now here's the thing. True, between Av that is, and Shvat, you don't have Nisan in between. So we know that Tishrei can't be the time that we count for the new year going out of Mitzrayim. But there are other months that maybe still we say that that's what we count to make the difference between one and the next year from Yetzias Mitzrayim. Even if it's not Tishrei, the Gemara is going to say, well, maybe it's Iyar, maybe it's Sivan, maybe it's Tammuz, actually maybe it's Chodesh Adar. If it's any of those months of the year, so it's not between Av and Shvat. As long as it's not between Av and Shvat, so then Av is the 40th year of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when Aaron HaKohen passed away, and Shvat is the 40th year when Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking to Yidden. So maybe it's some other date, even though the Gemara doesn't give any reasons. What would be the reason to make Iyar or Sivan or Tammuz? Right? It doesn't make any sense. True. Okay, I'll address it in a minute. But the Gemara asks that question. The Gemara asks, maybe we count Yetzias Mitzrayim, and every year of Yetzias Mitzrayim changes from some other date. Who says it's Nisan? So let's just see the Gemara inside. Maybe I should say Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, from when I count Yetzias Mitzrayim Iyar. Maybe I count from the Chodesh Iyar. So the Gemara says, no, that can't be. Lo yisal kedaitach, that's impossible. The chsiv, because the pasuk it says, Vayi b'chodesh harishon b'shana hashenis be'echad lachodesh hukam ha'mishkan. That on the Chodesh Nisan, the year after Yetzias Mitzrayim, the second year, they put up the Mishkan. That's one pasuk. So it's the second year. Uksiv, and then it also says, Vayihi b'shana hashenis b'chodesh hasheni, when it was the second year from when they left Mitzrayim, in the second month, which is Rosh Chodesh year, Na'ala anam ala Mishkan ha'edus. So what do we see here? Middekai bin Nisan, when it was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, v'kari le'shana shenis. And that's called the second year of leaving Mitzrayim. And then v'koi be'ir, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh Ir, v'kari le'shana shniya. And it also refers to it as the second year of going out of Mitzrayim. So meklal, the Rosh Hashanah, la'aviru. So I see that Rosh Hashanah, that on Chodesh Ir, I don't switch it to the next year. It's still Shana Shenis. Okay, so now the Gemara goes weiter. Ve'eim Rosh Hashanah Sivan. Maybe I count a new year for leaving Mitzrayim from Sivan. So the Gemara says, Lo yisal kedaitach. Also, that can't be. T'chsev, because the pasuk says, B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. On the third month, when Yidden left Mitzrayim, that's when they came to Midbar Sinai for Matan Torah. Ve'emise, if it's true that from Rosh Chodesh Sivan it changes the year, so it should have said, B'chodesh hashlishi b'shana hashenis l'tzeis v'geimer. It should have said that the year changed, it's the next year, Shana hashenis.
If you say B'chodesh hasheni, so we're the second month of what?
Again, it says B'chodesh hashlishi. We're talking about Sivan.
But the first pasuk, this
yeah.
It says B'chodesh hasheni, B'chodesh hashlishi.
Yeah.
So that means there's a first month. That's when it starts.
Okay, no, but the question is the Shana, the year. We're talking here about the year, not about the month. The year.
So how can it be the second month?
It's the second month of this year. We're talking about the year of the king, not about the months. We're talking about the year. And beneged to the year, is it still the first year of the leaving Mitzrayim or the second year? Let's go weiter if you don't mind.
You go further, but you understand what I'm saying.
No. Okay. So now the Gemara is discussing the third month, Sivan. B'chodesh hashlishi l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael v'im iseh. B'chodesh hashlishi b'shana hashenis l'tzeis v'goyim b'bayalei. Should have said that in Chodesh Sivan it's the second year. So it doesn't say that. So we see that in the third month of Sivan it does not change. It's still the same year. Weiter the Gemara asks, v'im Tammuz. Maybe Rosh Chodesh Tammuz is when the year changes of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Ve'ema Av, maybe it's Rosh Chodesh Av. Ve'ema Adar, maybe it's Rosh Chodesh Adar. Any of these months. Again, the point here is, as long as it's not a time between Av and Shvat, because we had the pasuk before that said that Av to Shvat is still the 40th year, maybe it's some other month of the year. So the Ran on this Gemara says that the questions of the Gemara are very weak, because there's really no reason that it should be any of these months. The Pnei Yeshua does give reasons. I didn't see it inside what he says, but the Ran says the Gemara's Shaila is very, very weak. The only reason it asks it is because the Gemara now is going to bring another source to this whole inyan. So therefore it's sort of just a lead up to another source. But really the questions of the Gemara are very weak, as I state in the Ran. Elam Rabbi Lazar. So Rabbi Lazar says, I'll bring you another source that the year of the king is counted from the Chodesh Nisan. Mehacha, there's a pasuk that says, by Shlomo HaMelech, Vayachel Livnois, he began building the Beis HaMikdash, B'chodesh HaSheni, in the second month of the year, in other words, in Chodesh Ir, B'Sheni. Then the pasuk again says, B'Sheni, in the second. What is that referring to? B'Shnas Arba L'Malchusai, in the fourth year of his kingdom. So the Gemara now says, Mai Sheni. When it says over there, B'Sheni, in the second what? Lav, don't you think it means Sheni liyerach shamaynim b'olam malchusa. He's saying the second month from when they began counting his kingdom. It's not only the second month of the year, Nisan being the first month of the year and Iyar being the second month of the year, but it also is the second month from when you count the kingdom of Shlomo HaMelech. So if so, you see over here that the time you begin counting the kingdom of Shlomo HaMelech is Chodesh Nisan. So this is Rabbi Lazar's raya that you begin counting the king's year from the Chodesh Nisan. But Ravina asks on this, maybe there's another pshat. Ve'eme, maybe this means is Sheni B'Chodesh. Maybe it means that Shlomo HaMelech began building the Beis HaMikdash in the month of Iyar, but not on Rosh Chodesh, on Beis Iyar. Maybe that's what the word Sheni here means, not the second month of the kingdom of Shlomo. Maybe it refers to Beis Iyar. And for the Gemara, no, Im Kain Sheni B'Chodesh Behedye Haviksiv Bei. If that's what the pasuk is referring to, it would have clearly said in the pasuk Sheni B'Chodesh, the second day of the month. That's the style of how the pasuk writes. Frek the Gemara Ve'eme B'Sheni B'Shabbos. Maybe when it says B'Sheni, it's referring to Monday. It's saying that he began building the Beis HaMikdash on a Monday. So the Gemara says that can't be either. Chode, number one, the Lo Yashkechon Sheni B'Shabbos T'chsiv. We don't find the Torah giving such dates. The Torah gives dates for the month, or maybe the day in the month, but the Torah to elaborate and to say what day of the week it was, we don't find that. The Torah doesn't do that. So it can't be that. And v'oit, and then there's another thing. Makish Sheni Basra l'Sheni Kama. We compare the two the expressions of Sheni in the pasuk. Ma Sheni Kama Chodesh, just like the first time it said Sheni, it refers to the second month of the year. Av Sheni Basra Chodesh. So too, when it says again Sheni, it also refers to the second month, but the second month to the year of the kingdom of Shlomo HaMelech. Okay, so that's the Rai of Rabbi Lazar. Now, the Gemara here is going back to the before, and Daf Beis Amud Beis, when it brought the previous Raya to when we count the king's year, it was Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was the one that brought the previous Raya, and now we have this Raya of Rabbi Lazar. So the Gemara says, Tanya Kvasei Rabbi Yochanan. We have a Braisa where it says like Rabbi Yochanan, and here this Braisa is going to go through this very bekitzer, bringing all the psukim we quoted before. Minayin, how do I know Shein Moin Olam L'Malachim Elam Nisan? How do I know that I count for the king for the month from the month of Nisan? Shenema, because it says by Shlomo HaMelech, Vayihi b'shmeinim shana va'arba meis shana l'tzeis b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. The Gemara doesn't bring the conclusion of the pasuk, and then it says over there also that it was b'shana haravius. It was the fourth year of the king. So we compare Tzias Mitzrayim to the year of the king, that it's both counted from Nisan. How do we know that Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan? Uksiv, Ayal Aaron HaKohen al Hoira Hor al Pi Hashem. Aaron HaKohen passed away on when, and the pasuk there continues to say the 40th year. The Gemara doesn't elaborate all of this because it explained it already before. So Aaron HaKohen passed away in the 40th year, And then Uksiv, there's another pasuk where it says Vayihi Barbaim Shana Ba'ashti Yasa Chaydish, that Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Yidden in the month of Shvat, and it's still the 40th year. Uksiv, and then there's another pasuk, and this is to clarify. The Gemara before asked the question. Maybe the order was the other way around. So the Gemara before explained. Uksiv Achrei HaKaisei Sichain, that when Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Yidden, it's after he killed Sichain. And Va'omer, and it says, when was Sichain killed? Vayishma Kanani. That was after Ar Nakayim passed away, and the Kanani, which is really Sichain, came to attack the Yidden. And Va'omer, and then there's the pasuk that says, Vayiru Kol Ha'eda, the Yidden all were exposed, Ki Gova Aaron, because Ar Nakayim passed away, and that's when they killed Sichain. And Va'omer, then there's the other pasuk the Gemara brought before, Vayihi B'Chodesh Harishon B'Shana HaShenis, the pasukim that the Gemara brought before to prove that Iyar is considered to be the second month of the same year. It's not a new year. And the same thing also, Vehi b'shana hasheni is b'chodesh hasheni, and v'ayim b'chodesh hashlishi, it says b'nei Yisrael, v'gaymer. These are all the psukim that we just brought. That the third month of the year is also considered to be part of the same year. And then, v'aymer v'yachal livnais. This last v'aymer, some Rishayim are not guided it, because this is actually the pasuk that Rabbi Lazar brought. The Gemara just said, Tanya k'vasei de Rav Yechanan. And this is the pasuk of Rabbi Lazar. Okay. Everything we said till here, in other words, the halach of the Mishnah that we count for the king from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that's for a Jewish king. When it comes to a Goyish king, if you're going to write into your documents the year of the Goyish king, Mitishrei, the years of the king change from Tishrei, from the regular Rosh Hashanah, Manina, that's when we count it. How do we know this? So that's going to be the rest of the sugya over here to discuss the Goyish king. Shenama, because there's the pasuk in the beginning of Nehemiah that says, Divrei Nehemiah ben Chachalya, the nevuah of Nehemiah, or the words of Nehemiah ben Chachalya, Vayihi b'chodesh Kislev, Shnas Esrim v'goyme. When did he speak? In the month of Kislev, and it says the 20th year of the king. And he's referring to the king of in Shushan. He's referring to a Goyish king. Oksiv, and then there's a pasuk later that says, Vayihi b'chodesh Nisan, and the Nisan following that Kislev, and it says again, Shnas Esrim la'ar Tachshasta, to the years of Ar Tachshasta. So what do we see here? Midukoi beKislev, when he was speaking in the month of Kislev, V'kari le'Shnas Esrim, it was the 20th year of the king. And then V'koi beNisan, V'kari le'Shnas Esrim. When it comes to the month of Nisan, he still refers to it as the 20th year of the king. Meklal, the Rosh Hashanah, Lav Nisan. So I see that Nisan does not switch it to the 21st year. The Rosh Hashanah of the Goyish king is not Nisan. So the Gemara now is going to dissect this raya. Bishloime heyach. I can understand in the second pasuk you just quoted, Mefarish delar Tachshasta. It says that he's speaking about the 20th year of Ar Tachshasta. Elahai, but on the first pasuk, Mimai delar Tachshasta. When it says that Nehemiah spoke in the 20th year, it doesn't say there the 20th year of who? How do you know it's speaking there about Ar Tachshasta? Dilme, maybe leminyana chrina. Maybe it's some other kind of thing that he was counting for. The 20th year of something else, not Ar Tachshasta. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Papa, Shnas Esrim, L'Gzeir Shava. These are two psukim that come, one not far from the other. By both of them it says the term Esrim and it's Gzeir Shava. Ma Hasam L'Ar Tachshasta. Just like in the second time it says Esrim, it clearly says the 20th year of the king Ar Tachshasta. Afhacha L'Ar Tachshasta. So to the first time when it says Esrim, it's the 20th year of Ar Tachshasta. Okay, but now the Gemara has another question. Umimai the Maisa de Kislev Kodim. How do you know that first the story of Nehemiah speaking in Kislev was first, and then afterwards came the story in Nisan? Maybe it's the other way around. Dilma Maisa de Nisan Kodim. Maybe the story that is said later over there that happened in Nisan, maybe that came first. Maybe first came Nisan, and then the following Kislev after Nisan is when it talks about Nehemiah in the beginning. If so, you would have to say, so that would have to be that it's in the same year, starting from Nisan. Yeah, so therefore you have no raya from here that when you count by a Goyish king, Nisan doesn't change the year. It's still the Kislev following the same Nisan. So the Gemara says, no, that can't be true. And now the Gemara is going to elaborate on the same two psukim that it just brought, but it's going to go through the details of the psukim that you see the order of how it happened. Tanya, we learned in a Braisa. Dvarim sha'ama chanani l'nechemya. Bekislev. They are the words that Hanani reported to Nehemiah in Kislev, as the Gemara is going to bring in a moment what this is about. Then later, Omra Nehemiah lemelech b'Nisan. Nehemiah later relates them to the king, Artaxasta, that is, in the month of Nisan. So what happened over there? So the Gemara Brisa says, Dvarim she'ama Hanani leNehemiah bekislev, the words that Hanani reports to Nehemiah in Kislev, Shenema, that's what the pasuk there says in the beginning of Nehemiah. What does it say there? Divrei Nehemiah ben Chachalya, Vayihi b'chodesh Kislev, Shnas Esrim, and it was in the 20th year of the king, in the month of Kislev, V'hani yisi b'Shushan Abira, and I was in Shushan Abira. Vayavai Hanani, and Hanani came, he came from Eretz Yisrael, he came from Yerushalayim. Echad me'echai, one of my brothers, hu va'anoshim, he and people with him, Yehuda, from Yehuda, which is from Eretz Yisrael. Vesh olem, and Nehemiah says, and I asked them, al ha-Yehudim ha-pleito asher nisheru min ashvi, I asked them about the Yidden that were left over there in Eretz Yisrael, from leftovers from those that were captured and exiled. And I also asked them, val Yerushalayim, about the condition of the city Yerushalayim. Vayomirli, and they answered me, Hanish'arem asher nisheru min ashvi sham b'Medina, the leftover Yidden that remained over there in the country in Eretz Yisrael. Bira gedola, they're in a very bad situation. Ubecherpa, and then cherpa, very embarrassed. V'choymas Yerushalayim ufuretzes, and that the wall of Yerushalayim is breached. Usharel nitzesu be'esh, and that the gates of Yerushalayim were burnt in the fire. In other words, this was still the Churban of the first Beis HaMikdash. So Hanani went up to Eretz Yisrael from Shushan Abira before Nehemiah, and he reported back of what he saw there, that the place is destroyed. So that's what happened in the month of Kislev. And then Omra Nehemiah lemelech b'Nisan. And then later Nehemiah speaks to the king Artaxasta about this in the month of Nisan. Shenemar, as the pasuk there says, Vayihi b'chodesh Nisan shnas esrim l'Artaxasta melech. Yayin lefonov, there was wine in front of the king. V'esas hayayin, and I picked up the wine for the king. V'etna lemelech, and I gave it to him. V'loya yisi ra lefonov. Usually, when I came in front of the king, I didn't come with a downed face, with a bad face. And today he did. And v'yayim Eliya melech, the king said to me, Madua panecha roim, why are you so sad today? V'ata en chachayla, and you're not sick. Ein zekiyim ra lev, you must have something in your heart that you're worried about, that's bad in your heart. V'ira har b'moed, and I was very afraid to speak to the king about this. V'ayim ala melech, and I said to the king, HaMelech le'olam yichya. First he blessed the king, let the king live forever. And then he said, Madua lo yireyu panai, why should my face not be looking bad? Asher ha'ir beis kivres avaisai, the city that has the beis kvaris of my fathers, Charva is destroyed, Shareh uchlu be'esh, and its gates are burnt in fire. So he basically reported to the king what he heard from Hanani about Yerushalayim. And the king answered me, Al mazatem avakish. So what is it that you request? So Nehemiah says, I daven to the Eibishter, Lekei Hashemayim, and he davened to the Eibishter that the king should accept his request. And I said to the king, if the king will have a good heart, and if your servant myself will be good in your eyes, Asher tishlacheni al Yehuda, send me to Yehuda al ir kivres avaisai ve'evnena, let me rebuild the city. Vayimeli hamelech, and the king said to me, Vahashegel yesheves etzloi, and his wife, which is called Shegel, is sitting right near him. Ad masai yeh mahalachacha, how long are you going for? And masai toshuv, and when are you going to return? Vayitav lefanei hamelech, and the king I was good in the king's eyes, Vayishlacheni, and he sent me, and I gave him a time of when I'm going to return. This is the Gemara here is quoting all the psukim here. Why is it quoting all the psukim? So you see now that at the beginning of Nehemiah, when he got the report of what's going on in Eretz Yisrael in Kislev, and then the next psukim, when it talks about when he spoke to the king in Nisan, first came Kislev, and then came Nisan. And Nisan, and they both are called the 20th year of the king. So I see from this that even though it came to Nisan, it's still called the 20th year of the king, because the new year for the Goyish king does not start in Nisan. It starts in Tishrei. That's the Raya. So now the Gemara asks on this, Mosiv Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef asks from a different pasuk where it says, B'yoim esrim v'arba l'chodesh, on the 24th day of the month, and which month? Bashishi, the sixth month that is, in Chodesh Elul. B'shnas shtayim l'der yavish, in the second year of the king Daryavish. That's one pasuk. So it's speaking about Chav Dalet Elul, second year of Daryavish. Uksiv in another pasuk it says, Bashvi b'shnas shtayim. Some are guided it. Rashi says you're not guided it. B'shvi in the 7th month, which is the following Tishrei, be'esrim ve'echad l'chaydish. In the 21st day of Tishrei, and in this pasuk, B'shvi, it still refers to it as the second year of the king. Rashi says, even if it doesn't clearly say it in the pasuk, but it's following the previous pasuk, and in El it refers to it as the second year of the king, and in Tishrei it refers to the second year of the king. Problem is, when it comes to a Goyish king, when it comes Tishrei, the year changes. It should have been V'im Isa, B'shvi in Tishrei, which is the 7th month, B'shnas Gimel Mibayle. The pasuk should have said that it's the 3rd year of the king. That's Rav Yosef's question. Amar Rabbi, so Rabbi answers, this pasuk is different because Kodesh Melech Kosher Hoya. Kodesh was a kosher king, even if he was a guy, but he was a kosher king. Lefichach manu loy kemalchi Yisrael. So therefore, for him, they do count his years from the Chodesh Nisan like a Yiddish king. That was Rabbi Vo's answer. So the Gemara is going to ask now 2 questions in Rabbi Vo's answer. Maskefla Rav Yosef asks on this 2 things. Chada number 1, dim ken kosher kroya dadi. If you're going to tell me that when it comes to Kodesh, which was a kosher king, so we count from the Chodesh Nisan, so then I'll bring you the following problem with another psukim. There's a pasuk that says, V'sheitzaya beisa dena, and the ending of when they finished building this Beis HaMikdash was when? Ad yoim tlasa liyerach Adar. It was on the 3rd day of the month of Adar. Dihi shnas shis lamalchos Daryavish. And this was in the 6th year of the kingdom of Daryavish Malka. So that's one pasuk. So regarding Daryavish, it says that when did they finish building the Beis HaMikdash? On the 3rd day of Adar of the 6th year of his kingdom. The Tanya, and then there's a brayso that says, Ba'oisai Zman, in that same time period, L'shana Abba, but the following year. Allah Ezra mi Bavel, that's when Ezra came up from Bavel. The Galusai Imai, and all the Yidden from Galus came with him. Uksiv, and the pasuk says, Vayavi Yerushalayim, Ezra arrived to Yerushalayim. B'chaydesh hachamishi, he arrived when? In Chaydesh Av, in the 5th month. And then it says there in the pasuk, Hi shnas hashvius lamelech. That's the 7th year of the king Daryavish. The problem is, why the 7th year? V'im isa, if you're telling me that he was a melech kosher, and for him we count from Nisan, shnas hashminis mibayale, it should have been the 8th year, because it was a year and 5 months later, right? The Beis HaMikdash was finished being built on Gimel Adar, and then the following Nisan is already the 7th year, and then the Av of Shana Haba, already the whole full year and another few months later is already after you passed Nisan twice. You passed the month of Nisan twice, so it should have been the 8th year, not the 7th year. If you're telling me that by this king, because he's a melech kosher, so therefore you count from the Chodesh Nisan. That's one question. Another question, v'oid, another problem here is, mi dami. What was Rabbi Vo's answer? Rabbi Vo was saying that when it comes to the king of Daryavish, he's a melech kosher, so we count from Nisan. But if you looked, if you didn't catch this when we read it before, I don't think anyone caught this, but the problem is, Rabbi Vo was saying that Kodesh was a melech kosher. The question was from the psukim that spoke about Daryavish, and he's answering him from Kodesh. What's going on? Mi dami, hasam Kodesh. You're telling me about Kodesh, and hacha Daryavish, and over here it's speaking in the pasuk, it's speaking about Daryavish. So how's Rabbi Vo saying that Kodesh was a melech kosher if we're speaking about Daryavish? Those are the 2 questions here. So the Gemara answers Tana. So regarding this second question, the Gemara answers Hu Kodesh, Hu Daryavish, Hu Artaxasta. These three names are really all one and the same name. It's the same person. And the Gemara explains, Kodesh, the word Kodesh is a spin off the word kosher. Shemelech kosher hay. That's because he was a melech kosher. Artaxasta, the name Artaxasta, al Shem al Chusa. That was the name of the kingdom. He was, by the way, the next king after Achashverosh. Daryavish was the next king after Achashverosh, and he had all these names. Uma Shmai, and what is his personal name? Daryavish Shmai. His name was Daryavish. So it's all the same person. Now the Gemara comes back, Mikol Makayim Kashya, but still the previous question we asked is still a question. Regarding Daryavish, when it says over here the 6th year and then it says the 7th year, even though 2 Nissans had passed, it should have said the 8th year, and it only refers to it as the 7th year. But if he was a melech kosher, why doesn't it refer to it as the 8th year? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, so Rabbi Yitzchak explains, Loi kashya. Kan koidim shehechmitz, kan la'acha shehechmitz. Even though we said that Yavish was a melech kosher and we count from Nisan, not always. There was before he became a Rasha and after he became a Rasha. In the beginning he was a tzaddik, and therefore we count from the month of Nisan. But then later, when he became a Rasha, they started counting for him like they count from all the Goyish kings from Tishrei. So that pasuk is talking about Acha Shehechmitz, after he became a Rasha. Okay, let me just clarify. This is the end of the Gemara for today. Well, let me just clarify one simple point over here. If you're paying attention to what the Gemara is saying, there's an obvious question here, and that is that it says over here that the Beis HaMikdash was built in the 6th year of Daryavish's kingdom. And we just concluded that Daryavish is Artaxshasta. And the beginning of the Nevuah of Nehemiah, it says that Nehemiah is speaking to Artaxshasta in the 20th year of his kingdom. What's going on? The Beis HaMikdash is already built in the 6th year of his kingdom, and he's speaking to the king, begging him to build a Beis HaMikdash in the 20th year of his kingdom. That's the question of Taisvis. You caught that detail when you saw the Gemara? So that's the question of Taisvis. So there's 2 answers in Taisvis. I'll tell you the second answer. The second answer, Taisvis says, yes, the Beis HaMikdash was built in the 6th year of his kingdom, but nevertheless, a lot of Yerushalayim was still destroyed, the walls of Yerushalayim, and there was things that were still not built properly. And he's telling the king, yeah, the Beis HaMikdash was built already, but nevertheless, there's the walls that are still breached, and therefore we should build that up as well. That's Taisvis' pshat. And that also fits with what the Gemara is saying over here. What is the Gemara saying? Kaidim shehechmitz and acha shehechmitz. Right? So what the Gemara is saying is, the whole raya, what was the whole raya we had before, b'negei to a goyish king, that we count for a goyish king from Tishrei. The raya was from the psukim at the beginning of Nehemiah regarding Artaxshasta. The problem is that Artaxshasta is Daryavish, which is Kaidish, which is a melech kosher. So what's Bechlal Daraya from there? Elamai, those psukim are speaking about in the 20th year of his kingdom after he became a Rosh already. Mashenkin over here, this psukim is speaking about in the 6th year of his kingdom when he was still a tzaddik. So it's 2 different things. One more interesting thing, let me point out, which is very interesting, and Taisus brings it up here as well. Even though the Gemara is talking about this Artaxshasta as a Goyish king, the truth is he was a Yiddish king. He was a Yid. Who was this Artaxshasta? Kaidish, Daryavish, the 3 names that we refer to him as. He's the son of Esther Amalka. It says that Esther Amalka, his father was Achashverosh, but his mother was Esther Amalka. So he's really a Yid. His mother is a Yid. But nevertheless, the Gemara constantly refers to him as a Goyish king because in his capacity, he was serving as a Goyish king in Shushan Abira, so we refer to him as a Goyish king, and when we're looking for a raya, how we count the years of a Goyish king, we talk about him as a Goyish king. But really, he was a Yid. His mother was Esther Amalka.